Oh my God, I get so nervous. And I was just telling Kate the last time we had a conversation, I would never be able to do what you all do on in the theater. The first time, because when we started working in Hong Kong, we actually never did sing sound on stage. Our voices were always dubbed. And the first time when I actually had to use my own voice, all I heard was my heart beating, like, ga-dung, 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 ga-dung. It was terrifying. And today, I think it's very good for us as actors to have butterflies in our stomach. You know, when you're running your lines and you think, oh God, it will be terrible if I forget all my lines. That's why I don't do stage. I will forget all my lines. But in the movies, at least you feel, or when you're doing TV, at least you feel if I fluff, I'll get a second chance to get it right, right? And you fluff. Sometimes you just go like, what am I thinking? Or what am I not thinking?
Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley from Variety. And it is my pleasure to introduce this year's SAG Award nominees for Outstanding Female Actor in a Leading Role, Ana de Armas, Cate Blanchett, Danielle Deadwyler, and Michelle Yeoh. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Congratulations on all your beautiful performances. This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors. So I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? Let's start with Cate, because you might have been acting for a while before you actually got the SAG card coming from Australia.
Yeah, I was acting in the theatre mostly. I came to film quite late. I think it was 25. So in actress years, that's quite ancient, or it was then. Thank goodness things have changed. It was on a film. I think I got what was called a 3-picture deal with which basically means it's getting you cheap. I made 2 films in Australia, and so it was on a film that I made with Mike Newell.
Oh, which one?
It's called Pushing Tin.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay. Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, when you get to play Queen Elizabeth and then you get to play a Long Island housewife, it was kind of, yeah, we always say yes to those asks.
And Danielle, what about for you?
Oh my goodness, I don't remember. I remember. I think it was on this film. It didn't come out. Unfortunately, I don't think.
But you got your SAG card.
Well, I got the card. I got some money, but it was a film about. It was a historical person who had been a prominent football player, and I played like one of his caretakers, family members, and so yeah, that was good. I had left a theater production in order to do the film, and I really wanted to do that play, but nonetheless, the tough war of whether to do TV or do theater. I mean, not TV, but to do film or theater, and I got yanked by the card.
We'll just say the harder they fall. How about that? That's the first time I can recall seeing you. So on screen. So, but we know you do have a SAG card.
Yeah, for sure.
Ana, for you?
I got it when I did Hands of Stone. I was still living in Spain, and that was my first movie with like production, American production. So it was something like, we can't pay you much, but we can get you into SAG. And I think I didn't really know what that was, but I remember other fellow Spanish actors that had moved to LA, and they had been struggling for years trying to get the SAG card. So I knew it was a big deal, and everyone was, very excited I got it. So yeah, I came to understand what it meant to get it. So that was a great experience all around, including getting my SAG card.
And Michelle, for you?
I think I got mine, Memoirs of a Geisha.
Wow.
So took me a while.
Yeah, you'd already done a lot of movies by then.
Yes, but then I did a lot of movies in Hong Kong, really. That's where I started my career, and there was no way to get a SAG card there. because I wasn't working in Hollywood. And really, Memoirs was probably my first Hollywood movie, because Crouching Tiger was not a SAG movie. And I was wondering if Tomorrow Never Dies was, but it was filmed in England. So, you know, it was like an English movie at that too. So, yeah, Memoirs of a Geisha.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, again, you're all here today.
But I got it. That's the main thing, right? And like I was saying, when I first came here, I didn't really understand that, you know, you had to get this card before you work and before you can get work, and how you had to go through the process of, you know, it's like chicken or egg, which one first? If you don't work, you can't get a SAG card, but you can't work because you don't have a SAG card. So it does make it life very, very difficult to get into, I don't know, it's still the same right now. So the SAG card is so precious.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure to pay your membership fee.
Yes, exactly. Well, you're all here today because you've been nominated by your peers for your work in recent films. I'd love to talk about how these roles came to you, but also just sort of in general, what you look for in a role. Cate, I know in your case, Todd Field wrote Lydia Tarr with you in mind, and he said he wouldn't have done it otherwise. So that has to be flattering.
Yes, well, fortunately, I didn't know that until we started doing press together, because that would have, I don't know if any words would have been able to come out of my mouth, you know, the expectation. But I think it's probably the same for you guys. Like, the ask was, I knew it would never come around again. It was one of those once in a lifetime opportunities of a role. And I think when I first read the script, obviously I'd met Todd before and we wanted to work together. So that was, I'm always driven by a director and the quality of that conversation. But when I read the screenplay, I just didn't know. It was so ambiguous and elusive and dangerous, and all of the elements in the script were so unknown to me. I just felt this big, and I was looking, you know, at the size of the mountain. And I think for me, it was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get there, and I don't know where to begin. And I think that for me, that's always a very exciting place to start from, because I always think if you can imagine exactly what you're going to do, and you can almost see the movie in front of your eyes then for me, that's a dangerous place to work from. And I certainly wasn't working from that place with Todd. So yeah, I just knew what an incredible opportunity it was.
On the flip side, Michelle, it's been, you know, talked about how Everything Everywhere All at Once was kind of originally imagined for Jackie Chan, but seeing what it's become, we literally can't imagine anyone else. And then it was really written for you because they even named the character Michelle. What was your response when you read this wonderfully insane script?
The first thing that crossed my mind was like, please don't let these two be certifiably insane, because you know, when you read the script and you go, oh my God, this is incredible. This is like a rare gem. And how do I realize it? It's such a profound story, but it's also such a simple story when you read it. It's really just about an Asian immigrant family that we know and we pass on the street, and a very ordinary woman, but was given the voice and had superpowers and became an extraordinary person. And I think we see that in our mothers, our aunties, our grandmothers, women that we are inspirational to us and that we have great respect for. And you're right, it was first written as an action movie with the hero as the guy. Then I think they did go and meet Jackie Chan, and they realized it would have been a Jackie Chan movie, which is great. It's very commercial, but it would have lost that generational trauma that we talk about. It would have not had that mother and daughter relationship. So they came back, they threw everything out, then they brought everything they were told that they couldn't do back into a story. And it was on surface, you know, when you read a script about, okay, I don't really understand where this character is, but I know it has a big heart, because, you know, I'm reading about hot dog fingers, you know, body parts that are being flung around and slapped with, and then guys trying to jump on butt plugs. You know, it fractures your mind. But I think like what Cate was trying to say, we all need to be challenged. We can't do movies that are easy, that we can just sit back and just stroll into the role. You know, it's like Danielle, when you do something that's so emotionally traumatizing, you have to go on this journey because you want your audience to see this and shine a light on things that are very, very difficult to put up with in real life, but it needs to be seen and heard. So as actors, I think that's what we all gravitate to, things that are not the norm, things that are very original, but things that challenge you no ends, that you go back and you go, I'm never going to be able to do this, but guess what? I am going to try, because that is my job as well.
And Danielle, what interested you until not only as a project, but specifically taking on the challenge of portraying this remarkable woman?
Yeah, it came in the most traditional way. I auditioned for the role. It came while I was filming from scratch. And so I was already about to deal with something that had a more balanced approach to dealing with loss and grieving. So then I had to, slowly roll into it, because I was just like, oh gosh, you received that kind of a script, but it has this particular POV of Mamie, which you don't have films that are delving into the civil rights era or the pivotal people who have impacted our lives as a result of that movement from that lens. And so I was attracted to that aspect of it. And I know that, Chenoya, Michael, and Keith Beauchamp, who is a mentee of Mamie, that kind of connectivity and that kind of exploration is pivotal. That's the kind of stuff you want to do. And you want to have that kind of check to participating in something like that. Some people can get, a part of films that don't have approval from family dynamics and whatnot. And you always want to feel like the footing, the foundation of something is good and ripe. And that's what that felt like. And not to mention, it's just a part of my personal DNA. I'm from Atlanta. The civil rights movement was integral in this space, and everybody who did something impactful in that manner and continue to do so through the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and whatnot, those folks, those institutions have been integral in my life, my personal life, as I volunteered with them as a child, along with my siblings. And so it's just really defined the way that I've grown up and my routes to like my moral compass and my artistic and personal values. And so I wanted to be that person to carry that forth.
I hope you don't mind if I ask, but because we have so many actors watching this, I'm really curious about the audition process, especially because it sounds like this role and this project meant a lot to you. Was it hard to not get invested or, to go through the process and it all worked out. You got the part, you're amazing. But during that whole process, they tell you not to think about it. Or not to obsess about it, but how can you not if you care?
Let it go.
I had to go to work. I had to go back to work. So with anything that I've gotten, I've had to audition for. And so the audition process was just submitting some tapes, right? I submitted 3 scenes for the that they wanted to look at. The one with Emmett, where she says for him to be small, and then 2 other scenes, the testimony scene, a portion of that, and then a piece of the Harlem rally scene. And so I just submitted them. And then they had, Chenoya was like, let's have a director session. And the director session entailed the funeral home scene. And we worked that through, and we had a lot of conversation about what it means to delve into the media perception or the aesthetic of what it looks like to be a wailing mother, a wailing Black mother specifically. And then we have more chats. You have more chats and you sit down and you wait a little bit more. And then they say, come and play. And then you say, okay. And then you have a wait, right? It's beyond the excitement of getting something. Then it becomes a responsibility.
What was it like when you did get that call that you had it?
I was getting off of work. So everything's like, gosh, it's all rolling together. I was getting off work. I was driving home. I'm not a LA driver. I was there for a spell, and I'm driving. I pulled over to the side, and there's like, yeah. And Chenoya called and said, would you like to be our Mamie? And I just, and then you go.
Wow.
So yeah, it's beautiful to do, to carry it.
And Anna, for you, did you ever imagine you'd be playing Marilyn Monroe? I mean, sometimes I think it takes other people to see something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself.
Oh my gosh, no, how could I? I mean, this was so completely out of the blue. It was a very unexpected thing. My understanding now, something I found out later, is that Andrew Dominic had been talking to my agents for 3 years prior to the first day we met. My agents were not believing too much in my English at the time, and they told him that he was crazy and I didn't speak English. So that meeting got postponed for 3 years until we finally met. And I didn't see it coming, but then at the same time, when it happened and I read it and I met with Andrew and I understood what he wanted to do, and I saw the entire photographic Bible that he did with like over 700 pages, the entire film in images, I was like, this is insane and I will never, ever work again, but I have to do this. I have to do this for myself, to myself. I have to give myself this. Whatever happens, we'll see. And again, this might be a career-ending, crazy thing to do, but I will never know. And I thought it was so beautiful and so special and different, and I just wanted to go for it and prove to myself and my agents and other people that being Cuban was not, it was not a problem, to play such an icon, American icon. So I never expected that, for sure.
And Anna and Danielle, you're both playing real life people. And I'm sort of curious, in your research, going in, what did you know or think you knew about these women? And were you surprised by some of the things you learned?
I didn't. I've known about Mamie since I was a child, since elementary school. But I think that public knows the iconic images. They know the black and white image of her grieving. They know the image of Emmett at the funeral rather, and the massive crowds that are mourning and reacting to the torturous remains of his body. However, there's more to them than that. And that's the whole value of the film. The film is to say that there is a beautiful love between this family, that there are extended people in this family, that they had a history, that he loved to cook, that he was joyful and funny, and he would pay for jokes from friends, and that she had a life. She had wonderful friends around her, and she was a prosperous woman of her era and in Chicago, and they were beautiful people, right? And that's what you want to communicate. Even though it doesn't, the films don't necessarily tell every detail of the life, but that fuses who you are and informs who you are sharing with them. And so those are the beautiful things that I think about when I think about their life and the way that it's been shown on film.
And Anna, for you have probably so much to draw from. How do you know kind of what to believe?
So much. I mean, I think, we all grow up watching Marilyn everywhere, pictures, images, stories, her films, everything you can imagine. But at the same time, everything for me was new, just the period, her environment at the time, her childhood, the relationship with her mother and father, and the industry and the business going on around, that time, and what she went through and everything, and her relationships, husbands and whatnot, and other people, and everything was new, because part of the, what the movie is about is, we're very familiar with the icon, with the character that she played, and clearly the movie has a very defines very well who Marilyn is and who Norma Jean is, and that Norma Jean hasn't been given a voice, not that I can remember ever before. That's the part that that was my job to discover and to explore, because sure, and in the film, I had to do a lot of recreations, and I had to study the character itself and try to get there when we wanted to and be as Marilyn as possible. But the movie was about the times where she was not being Marilyn and what was happening to her as a woman, as an actress, as a human being. And what I thought it was, the beauty of it, even though it's a very hard film to watch and a lot to process, it's about trauma. And trauma is not something that happens to you, it's how you cope with it and what you remember, how you perceived it. So it doesn't matter what people say, this is what happened. If it's not what you heard or not what you felt, that's not your story. That's not how you saw it. So it was about to find those moments of truth and peel all those layers and affectations that she had as Marilyn and just make her as simple as possible, just as a girl, as a woman, as a teenager, as a, someone trying to be who wanted to be taken seriously and recognized as an intellectual, and someone who wanted to be a serious actress and didn't get that at the time, didn't get the respect at the time. So all of that was new for me because all I knew was to surface the stories, the images that we all see all around, and we have associated with a specific narrative or story that maybe that was not what was happening, or at least we should consider if there was something else going on.
I want to step back just a second because when I was asking Danielle about not getting too invested in wanting that role, Cate, you said it's impossible not to get invested. And I actually don't know when the last time was that you auditioned for something, but how did you sort of handle, those situations? This is a tough business. And I'm curious, how you kept yourself motivated and kept yourself positive when you're waiting for that phone to ring.
Yeah, I mean, when I first came out of drama school, which is quite some time ago, I didn't work, and the great thing that happened to me was that one of the big casting directors at the time had seen my terrible monologue at the end of drama school, but had seen something in me, and so even though I wasn't working, I couldn't afford to buy a cup of coffee. She would ask me to come in and read opposite people when they were auditioning. And it was, from an anthropological perspective, it was fascinating about what people brought into the room, whether they came in with a question or whether they came in to please, how they auditioned. And so it was also, I realized that having never worked in the film industry, and I went primarily to a theatre school, you realize that you, as an off-camera performer, you have an enormous job when you're not on screen to help to make that performance come alive for that other actor. It always happens between the two of you, whether you're on screen or off screen, or when you're in the back of shot, or whether you're in a close up. You have a responsibility to play in that scene, and I sort of, in a way, passively learnt about the audition process. So when I went into those terrifying airless rooms, I at least was familiar with that atmosphere. And I realized also very quickly that sometimes it's not personal, that someone would come in and you go, that was astonishing. And they go, no, I want someone shorter, or we've already cast this other person and they've got so much energy and that person's really great, but it's not a good energetic match. And sometimes the terrible way in which they talk about actors, they talk about them like objects. And so it toughened me up in a way. And I realized that in a way you have to come into, and it helps an actor to go into an audition saying, and that's really hard when you can't afford to buy a cup of coffee or pay your electricity bill to go in. But if you can trick yourself into saying, do I want to work with this director? Maybe I'm going to see what the chemistry is like. Maybe I'm going to see whether when I'm confronted and actually have to put these words into my mouth, whether I actually truly like the script. I mean, and it's, of course you want the job, you might need that job, but it gives you a sense of empowerment in the room. And believe me, I did not get every job I then auditioned for. That was far, far from the truth. The first job I got was the one I thought, I'm never going to get this, and I don't even know if I want it. And then I got offered the role. I think they, but yeah, that was a really, in retrospect, it was a profound education, practical education for me in the audition process.
I've heard so many actors say, if you can, be a reader in an audition room, because it does teach you so much. Yeah. And also actors need good readers, because sometimes it's someone who's not an actor.
Right. It's a mini ensemble, isn't it? Which is what it's all about.
And I love the idea of you're sort of auditioning the people you'd be working with too, thinking about it that way.
Well, yeah, it's a trick. We all have to trick ourselves as actors that we're not terrified, are we? We're just excited.
Yeah. I've also heard actors say that some of them actually, this is crazy to me, but they actually prefer to audition because they feel like they've won the role, and they won't get fired down the road. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but like Danielle, you worked hard to win this role. When you got to set, maybe you didn't have the same, or actually, maybe you all have first day of school jitters when you show up to a set. No matter, if you've been given the role, if you audition for it, it's always nervous to walk onto a set.
Yeah,
definitely.
For sure. Yeah.
The first time you open your mouth.
Danielle, what was it like for you? I mean, you're first on the call sheet, you're leading this movie that, as I said, is not only a great movie, but really means something to you. How do you sort of put those first day of school jitters at ease?
Well, I think that Chenoya and I had done the work, right? That preliminary work. I done the things that I needed to do for sure. Like, you compile all of these things that you need: theses, archival footage, archival imagery, her memoir, which was a kind of Bible of sorts, talking to various people, not to mention talking to the folks who are going to work with you. And then we did do rehearsal. So, I treat everything at the end of the day like theater, and I do performance art. And so you just drop yourself into the space. You'll be okay. So it's not just you doing a thing, it's the community doing the thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants it's not everybody wants you to do great or you to win. It's everybody wants to do well by this offering that we have to give. And so, you freaked out a little bit at the first take, but then go, just go. And it'll move and groove the way that it needs to.
And also, there's often too much work to do.
Yeah, you can't be.
I mean, all of the roles that you've done, and I know for myself, there was so much work to do that you just, in a way, that takes away the nerves if you focus on the work. And also, I think, focus on the other actor. That's always, for me, even if I'm in a close-up, I always imagine that I'm on the other side and it's actually a close-up on the other actor. Yeah. And it somehow, that helps with my nerves anyway.
And are you ever maybe aware you might be intimidating to other actors? Because Michelle, I spoke to all your Crazy Rich Asians co-stars, and they all talked about being so nervous to work with you because it made them really want to show up. And you probably can't think about that, but at the same time, does it occur to you?
Oh my God, I get so nervous. And I was just telling Kate the last time we had a conversation, I would never be able to do what y'all do on in the theater. The first time, because when we started working in Hong Kong, we actually never did sing sound on stage. Our voices were always dubbed. And the first time when I actually had to use my own voice, all I heard was my heart beating, like, ga-dung, 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 ga-dung. It was terrifying. And to date, I think it's very good for us as actors to have butterflies in our stomach. When you're running your lines and you think, oh God, it will be terrible if I forget all my lines. That's why I don't do stage. I will forget all my lines. But in the movies, at least you feel, or when you're doing TV, at least you feel if I fluff, I'll get a second chance to get it right? And you fluff. Sometimes you just go like, what am I thinking? Or what am I not thinking? And I think in that way, I would never look at, with Crazy Rich Asians, they were all young actors. So, I am intimidating in the sense that I was one of the oldest on set, and they know I could kick their ass if they stepped out of line. They were like, don't mess with me, okay? And the role that I played was kind of intimidating as well. So it all like added up. But most important was like a lot of these Asian actors never really had enough opportunities in roles to play. Crazy Rich Asians was the first all Asian cast after 26 years in Joy Luck Club. Right? So for them, it was like such a big moment, and they had to step up, because if they failed this time, when is this moment ever going to come again? It's like talking about auditions. I never got a role. Every time I went for an audition, I failed. I must be so bad.
You were working.
But it's good. I think what it is that it makes us work hard, and to be prepared, to be good at what you do. You have to work at it. It just doesn't drop on your lap, and you think. And when the opportunity does come to you, if you work hard, it will happen in a better way.
Yeah. I'm curious, if you never got a role from an audition, how did you start booking roles?
When I first came out to America to start working, it was after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And it was because there was a big there was a big, Hollywood is the ultimate dream for any filmmaker or actor from the East. Because, if you can make it to Hollywood, that means you're there. Then when I actually got out there, I realized, wow, Hollywood told me I'm a minority, and that I didn't understand that before. It was a culture shock. It was, I wouldn't see my faces on the screen, or even not so many on TV. So it was a really difficult process. And a lot of these roles that I first encountered were very stereotypical roles. That was, you were either working in a Chinatown, in a Chinese restaurant. Yes, given everything all at once, it is the typical role that, when they come over here for the American dream, they start something that they know they can work hard at, whether it's a laundromat, whether it's a takeout, whether it's a cleaning. So it's things that, because their education doesn't allow them yet to have that kind of middle-class jobs. So they have to fall back on what jobs that they can get. So our faces were not reflected in the normal roles. And so it was a long process. It was a fight to be seen, but to be seen in the proper way, to be represented properly.
You all work with these amazing collaborators, writers, directors, other actors. I'm sort of curious about the discussions you've had for these roles. Michelle, I mentioned at the top that you were comfortable asking the Daniels to change the name of your character from Michelle to Ellen.
I felt it was necessary. I truly felt that, because that character, that ordinary woman, deserves her voice to be shown. And if you called her Michelle, the audience would be so distracted the whole time. It's like, are we looking at Michelle trying to be somebody else? Every time you say the word Michelle, it would be, oh, it's Michelle trying to play an immigrant, trying to play this laundromat. Or, well, yeah, but she looks older and all these. When we create a character, we have to give it its background, is her own history. So the way she walks, the way she talks, the way she dresses, it has to be uniquely for her, for Evelyn Wong. So yes, that was my first request to the Daniels, was that you have to change the name.
Were they pretty open to that from the start?
They resisted. They were like, but we wrote it for you. That for them, it's like, but we had you in mind when we wrote that, because you can do all these kind of things. And I'm eternally grateful that they saw Michelle Yeoh as an actor who was capable of all these multifaceted faces and, and capabilities to do drama, to do comedy, to do action, to do, horror, to do the craziness that they put out there. But it was much more important to me that I am not seen on that screen. It's the character, the story that you are telling that's more important.
Well, I think you're right. And it's one of those situations where, you really knew this character. I'm curious for the rest of you, what were sort of the conversations like in shaping your characters? And were there ever things that maybe you felt, weren't necessarily in the script, or someone else had a different idea? And Anna, did you have any input into these amazing hair and costumes, which I feel is such a big part of becoming Marilyn? Or maybe you didn't want any say. These people, work their magic.
I was very lucky. I got a great team in every possible, department that was like my immediate surroundings. Like, hair and makeup was incredible. Our costume designer, Andrew, everybody. But, Andrew Dominic was working on this movie for 10 years before we met. So between this photographic Bible and the novel and all the references and photographs that we were recreating and in the film and the real films that we also recreated. We had so much information. Everything was so tied up together. Everything made sense, everything. And it was good when there was a little room for them to bring their own, taste and opinions and everything. And I feel like in wardrobe, for example, we were trying to match as much as possible the pictures, but at the same time didn't want the clothes to feel like it was a uniform or like something I was wearing these clothes because that's what it was matching, but more like making it my own and we didn't use prosthetics in the movie, either for makeup or wardrobe. We were trying to use my body and use the clothes or the makeup, trying to make me look more like Marilyn. So, shape of the pants or the seatbelts or the bra, making them pointy, and like the makeup and the eyelashes and everything was kind of like we found everything little by little. We did have, from the moment I auditioned to when we started shooting, I think it was about 9-10 months in between. So I took that time to my advantage. I had a lot of work to do, a lot of research, a lot of dialect coaching going on, a lot of everything, but also those departments too. And we had over 100 costume changes in the film. So I've never had more costume, tests in my life. Like we were trying clothes literally every day for hours. Mm-hmm. So, everything was like, Andrew was very, very prepared. He really was. And everyone was just going back to him or the references that we had. And it was very clear the direction in which we all had to go. And he had pretty much all the answers that we needed. And yeah, it was a very, very clear path that we all had to follow. Yeah.
And Danielle, it sounds like you started collaborating with your director before you even officially had the part. Did
we? Yeah. Well, the conversations. You had to have those specific conversations to know that you can trust each other and be on the same path, especially with something as deep in the American psyche as it is, right? And so we just, we had that together. But the interesting thing is the conversations that I had with like Keith Beauchamp, who was her mentee and one of our writer and producers. He knew Mamie as an elder, but he didn't know Mamie as a 33-year-old woman going through this particular experience. So there was a filtering of his knowledge of who she is and crafting that with the offerings of various videos and interviews and whatnot, and just the memoirs information, and then the intuitive nature of what it means to be a woman in that moment, like taking it beyond the frame of the kind of images that we see of her, the iconic images that I spoke about earlier. So, we had, it's a lot. To have a memoir is one thing, right? Like, the line of growth of who that person is from, their perception of their birth to their death. And so that don't hurt to have,
Cate, so many people believe when they see this movie that Lydia Tarr is a real person, which I think is the highest compliment. But you didn't have a memoir or anything like that you could draw from. You know, what was it like creating this character from scratch?
Well, I had the screenplay, and you never know where the point of connection is going to come from, or the point of empathy with your character. And Todd and I, the film was actually meant to happen a year earlier, but I'm sure, like all your projects, the pandemic had a big impact on that. And so, but for me, because I'm quite slow, it was great because I had a year to sort of get on top of all the technical demands. Because so the conversation I initially had with Todd, apart from the title, I said Tar. I said, it's such a strange surname. Where's it come from? And then I was in Budapest filming with Jamie Lee. And I went on one weekend, I went to this sort of secondhand place. And the word for pharmacy, which I can't pronounce in Hungarian, it has TAR in the middle of it with an accent over it. And I was saying, why don't you add an extra R to the name? And then I saw this and I took a photo. And then Todd he liked the accent. So he put the accent on the name. So it's sort of, but so began with practical things. I think because the questions that the film asks are so deep, and so the process was so organic, and we kept one question unlocked another question in terms of the kind of the existential haunted end of the film. But we started very practically with which sections of the score of Mahler's Fifth are we going to look at? I got an original score, and so breaking down and learning to read a score so that I could actually stand in front of the Dresden Philharmonic and know exactly what I was talking about, because I knew that he and Florian Hofmeister, our wonderful DP, wanted to film it in a very verite way. It was very much fly on the wall. They wanted the audience to be privy to more about the character's actions and thoughts than the character was themselves. She's someone who's very hidden from herself. And in a way, the trick was, I think for me, or the difficulty, the challenge, was that as one of the world's greatest performers, concert musicians, in a way, her greatest performance is herself. So she's become, through the process of getting closer and closer and closer to this elusive, pointless exercise of trying to make something perfect, which will never, it's not pointless, but it's impossible, right? The closer she feels she's getting to that thing, the further and further away she's got from herself. So the carapace and the exterior of the character were really important. I mean, for me, those often you don't get time to rehearse. We did a little bit with Todd. We had 10 days, and we had a couple of hours with the Dresden Philharmonic Orchestra. But you get time in the hair and makeup department. You get time with the costume designer to say, what is the character trying to say? In my instance, what, with those costumes, how can we express their emotional life? Because in this, I might be incredibly still in this moment, but the way I'm wearing the clothes will give the audience a visual signal into the emotional state of the character. And so I always get really upset when those very, very, very vital departments, which are often run by women, are sort of sidelined on set. They'll give time to the lighting department, they'll give time to the grips and the electrics and all of those things, but often the hair and makeup people and the wardrobe people are so pivotal to an actor's process, and it certainly was for me in this. And so, but anyway, I'm rabbiting on, but in answer to your question, the conversation was really intensely practical.
I had no idea you came up with the accent, Mark, which has been the bane of my...
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, Budapest did. It's a Hungarian language. I mean, she's of Middle European descent, her family. That was sort of part of the backstory. And so it just was a joke that turned into yeah.
But she came up with her own name, right? Because Tar isn't even her real name. So I think that also says something about...
I mean, so much about her is invented. And so the film begins with this really, really long interview. And so I had to sort of decide which parts of that, because we all do it. Like the more you tell an anecdote, the more it becomes an anecdote. And the further and further it gets away from the epicenter of the feeling or the experience that you had it from. And that often happens with conductors, particularly female conductors, is that in order to have the right to play those great works of music, you have to have a mentor who's had a mentor who knew Mahler, that gives you the authority and the right to play the music. So she didn't have that, so she had to invent those things. So I had to decide which parts of her of what she said about herself were genuinely true.
And then did you talk to Todd about that? Because as the writer of the screenplay, you know, did he have feelings on what absolutely had to be true, or did you just sort of decide on your own?
He's such an amazing director. It's almost like he didn't write the screenplay. There were certain sections in the screenplay where I'd say, when we're shooting, I said, "Are you sure you don't want to get this? Because," and he said, "Oh, no, don't worry about that." And he would treat his own screenplay with a really healthy disregard. And he was more interested in a way in what bits of it were useful in the moment to that group of actors. I guess being an actor himself. Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, because this business can be so challenging, and again, we have so many actors watching this, is there a piece of advice which you've gotten early in your career that you would want to pass on to actors now? I know that's kind of a heavy question, so I want to give you a second to think about it. Whoever wants to be brave enough to go first.
Andrea Fry is a writer, director, actor here in Atlanta. She's been in a number of things, but these are pivotal. I'm thinking of pivotal Black women who defined my life in Atlanta. And she told me, always elevate everything you do. And that has driven my art practice across mediums, as well as the way I step in my humanity. So, yeah.
I think it's really important to know why you want to be here, why you want to be an actor. Is it really, doing that skill, or you're just thinking, I will be famous, I would be, this and that. So I think at the end of the day, it has to be, for me at least, it has to be real passion for what I'm doing, because it just takes you away from your family. It is hard. There's no guarantee of when's the next job. You don't know what's going to be around the corner. And you have to be fearless not to fail, not once, but twice. But and then working very, very hard. But really need to know, what you want? Because, you never know when the real job is going to come, and when your opportunity to really rise and be able to be seen comes.
I'm going to go next because I can't be the last one giving advice. It has to be Cate.
I have no advice.
Okay, so I'm just going to get it over with. I think for me, in my experience, and this is not a piece of advice that anyone gave me in particular, but it's been a constant throughout my life and career. When I started working in Cuba, when I was also in drama school, when I was 16. When I was 18, I decided to leave the country. I moved to Spain, and everyone was like, "You're crazy. You didn't graduate from drama school. You have work here. What are you doing?" Still, I left because I felt like that was the right thing to do. Like, my instincts were telling me, you can go somewhere else. You can do more. You can meet other people. You can, do greater things. Then I moved to Spain, and I was there for 8 years working on TV and some films. And again, had the same feeling, like, I gotta go after 8 years. Also, like, leaving your people behind, family and friends and the community of actors that you work with. And after 8 years in Madrid, I did the same thing. I left everyone behind, and I moved to a country where I didn't even speak the language. I didn't know anybody. And everyone in Spain was like, "You're crazy. Everyone knows you. You have a career. What are you doing? You're going to LA? You're out of your mind." I didn't listen, and I moved, and I did it when I was 26. And 7 years later, you know, I'm having a panel with you guys, and we're discussing movies that are being recognized, and I never thought I was going to play Marilyn Monroe. And it's, you know, so I think my advice, by the way, not everyone told me I was crazy and I shouldn't do these things. I also had a lot of people saying, good for you, keep going, trust yourself, go for it, you know, only you can do this. So that's what I would say. Just trust yourself and what your gut is telling you, and work hard and keep doing what you feel like is the right thing for you. What will make you feel like you're growing and you're learning and you're getting out of your comfort zone. That's my favorite thing, out of my comfort zone. So that's what I would say.
Cate, I'm sorry, they've dictated you must go last.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone has their own path and their own process. So it's sort of, you take or leave advice, don't you? But I think for me, I constantly return to listen, you know, and be sensitive to the atmosphere around you. Because I think if you're alive to what the other actors are doing, if you're alive to the conversations that the electric department's having and the DP is having with the director, or something that the continuity person is saying about the timing of the scene, you'll get a sense of how the thing is being shot. So you won't be just inside somebody else's frame, you'll be part of the frame. And my relationship, maybe it's because I come from a very small filmmaking culture in Australia, but my relationship to crew members is really important, you know, because they're your first audience, you know, I think it's listening to the way what the other actors are offering, or maybe the mood they're in that day, and how you can work together with that mood, and so that the thing can exist between you. But it's also being really alive to the atmosphere that everyone on that film set is trying to make, not just the actors, but all of the people who are leaving their shitty mornings behind, or their great mornings behind, or their marital troubles behind, or their economic woes behind, and they were all on set together trying to make this thing together. So I think that's something that I always think about.
Well, again, I want to congratulate you all on just terrific performances. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you so much for sharing your experience, process, and your time with our audience.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And well done for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. It's an extraordinary body that has been so supportive to the acting community. So bravo.
Mm-hmm.